Online, TFO for short. TFO was founded almost on a whim by Professor Nikhila and myself in June 2020 during the lockdown. Since then, TFO has had uninterrupted discussions on films from all over the world every Saturday at 9 p.m. on Zoom. It is a group of film scholars, researchers, students, teachers, and anyone passionate about cinema. It has been our practice to invite people to select and lead the discussion of the chosen film, which we watch in our own time and place. On some occasions, filmmakers, editors, and cinematographers have also joined our sessions. Aparna Sen, Amol Palekar, Girish Kasarwalli, and Adur Gopalakrishnan, to name a few. We have held film festivals such as East European, Iranian, Women's Cinema, and others. In the month of June each year, to celebrate our anniversary, we hold a smartphone short filmmaking contest for students and a lecture series in various university departments. This evening, we discuss AIYYA. Bageshree Trivedi will initiate the discussion. Bageshree is an assistant professor for English at the Faculty of Law, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. Her research interests span gender studies and region studies with a focus on higher education in Gujarat. She finds the emerging area of decoloniality exciting, and her research has been published in international and national journals. Her multilingual background allows her to pursue translation and peek into a wide range of art and literature. Having grown up on a steady diet of parallel and regional films, she finds cinema to be a constantly inventive mode offering exciting approaches to understanding visual narratives and is keen on exchanging her insights with fellow cinephiles. Welcome, Bageshree, and over to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And first of all, I'd like to begin by thanking Talking Films Online and particularly Geeta ma'am once again for allowing me to join and lead one more discussion. I have led a discussion before, and I can say that it was an absolutely stimulating experience to not just share my insights, which are, I think, few, but more importantly, to be able to share these with a larger circle of film scholars, analysts, and enthusiasts. So I would say that is what I look forward to the most every time I join Talking Films Online. So once again, thank you for sharing your platform with me and giving me an opportunity to talk about my response to the movies that I enjoy watching. So I have made a PowerPoint presentation, and I was wondering if I could share it.
Yeah, you may share it. Yeah.
I'm getting a message that the host disabled participants.
No, one minute. It will.
Sure.
Nikhila will do it.
Sure.
Yeah. It's ready. You can.
You can.
Okay. All right. Yes. So speaking about this movie, AIYYA, I'm not sure how many of us must have actually watched it, because it was not one of the very, I would say, commercially successful movies. So I'm sure that this is not a group where we typically delve into commercially successful movies as a parameter, but it was released as a commercial film in big screen theaters, and I think that is what sets this movie apart from others. Of course, commercially it was not a success, but what I find particularly interesting about this movie is that it was also critically not so much of a success. That is, it had a mixed response, but I would say it has been one of the most distinct movies that I have watched, and what it sets out to do, it does with great gusto. And on a platform like this, I wouldn't have wanted to miss an opportunity to discuss a movie like this. So I would like to begin my presentation first by asking whether it is visible.
Yes.
It is.
Okay. So I would like to preface this by saying that I think what I'm going to say today is probably going to be very polarizing. So either everyone would completely agree or completely disagree. And I look forward to both those reviews at the end of the discussion. So having said that, AIYYA was released in 2012 and is directed by Sachin Kundarkar. He initially made a series of 3 short films titled Gandha, which I think was released in 2009, where he explores the stories of 3 women with a heightened sense of smell. And so AIYYA is typically considered to be a spin-off on uh, this concept driving the short films, that is of a woman protagonist who is at the center, driven by a very heightened sense of smell. And that may sound quirky to most of us, but I think quirkiness is the defining characteristic of this movie. It is what the movie banks on. So as you can see in the poster is also made in a manner that makes the movie look like a fantastic tale. And probably that is the structure it is going for. In terms of genre, AIYYA is made more like a farce or a parody. Where it works as a parody and where it is a farce, we will come to know in the discussion itself. But in the beginning, I said that I find this movie distinct and singular in what it sets out to do. And I think the very first quality of the movie that sets it apart is here we have a farce uh, or a comedy with a woman protagonist at the center. And it is not a subtle comedy, it is not an intellectual comedy, but at many places it is a very loud parody and a very loud comedy. So I think the very choice of having a woman protagonist at the center of a comedy in a commercial movie is distinctive. Secondly, I think in 2012 we were still very far away from having this kind of mixed casting of movies from the of actors from the Hindi film industry and the southern film industry. And Prithviraj Sukumaran, who's a Malayalam actor, made his debut in the Hindi film arena with AIYYA. So even in terms of its casting, which has a female actor who is considered to be one of the top commercial actors in the Bollywood cinema genre, being paired with an actor from Malayalam cinema, and on one hand, and an actor from Marathi cinema, Subodh Bhave on the other, in itself makes it a very interesting mix. For those of us who have not been able to watch the movie completely, I'll just get into the plot summary. At the center of the movie is the girl Meenakshi, who comes from this quintessential, traditional, middle class Brahmin family, who is of marriageable age. Therefore, the only goal of her mother is to get her married into a very good, respectable family with a boy who is earning well and other such considerations. And on the other hand, Meenakshi lives in this fantastical world of her dreams, and everything that is in her reality, everything that surrounds in her reality is in stark opposition of her dream world, and the dream world is what she aspires. And at one point in the story, there is an overlap between her reality and her dream world, and that is with the entry of our Tamil artist Surya, played by Prithviraj Sukumaran, who is shown to be this very silent, taciturn, mildly aggressive sort of character who is studying painting at the college where Meenakshi works in the library. And when this meeting happens, that is when things start taking a turn for her. On the other hand, her marriage is also arranged with Madhav Rajadhyaksh, who is a dependable, very nice, well-settled, good Marathi boy. And so begins the story of Meenakshi's conflict between the expectations of her family on one hand and what her heart desires on the other hand. So the central conflict of the movie, in my view, is whether Meenakshi will step out of the frame that has been predefined for her based on her gender background, her caste and class background, etc. And that is what the story pursues. So in the beginning, I said that the movie was not a commercial success. I think looking at the plot summary, most of us could guess why. But it has also not had very favorable critical reviews, or it has had mixed critical reviews. And I think two stark reactions that as an audience one gets, or even as a critic one finds in the reviews, is that one, I think this is a movie that makes most of us very uncomfortable. Most of us used to consuming the very typical value systems, depictions, gender relations, role relationships, or plots that are available in Hindi or other cinema that is commercially released and is successful both. So this movie makes you very uncomfortable as an audience. And second, as I said, that the reactions to this can be polarizing. So I would say these are the two demons that have pursued the success of this movie. And there's a lot that can be said about this movie. But looking at the amount of time that we have for the discussion, I will stick to a central thrust in this discussion, and that is how Kundarkar uses the stereotype in creating this movie. And my argument is that he deliberately uses a lot of stereotypes, or he builds stereotypes in order to eventually break these stereotypes or make us question them. And that is where the success of the movie lies. So let's look at the first stereotype. The first stereotype that Kundarkar creates is the Maharashtrian middle class family. And not just the Maharashtrian middle class family, but here is where an overlap begins between the two worlds. One world is the world of the Maharashtrian middle class family, and other is the world of commercial Hindi cinema. So if we look at the opening scene of the movie, there is a newspaper that is outside the dream sequence. The movie begins with a dream sequence where Meenakshi is playing all the big Bollywood heroines in their iconic roles, whether it is Madhuri Dixit or Juhi Chawla in Kayamat Se Kayamat Tak and Sridevi in Mr. India. So that's a dream sequence, but as soon as the dream sequence ends, we see a newspaper guy coming to the home of Meenakshi and saying that, oh, tumhari behan ka naam paper mein aaya hai. That's what he tells his brother, her brother. And the entire family comes together. And in the opening scene, we have this, typical elation, all the families coming together, all of them talking in exaggerated melodramatic style. There is a very stereotypical description of Meenakshi as a 22-year-old girl who is very gharelu, who, believes in puja part, who does all the chores of the home very well, and so on and so forth. And so it almost resembles the typical opening scene of a Suraj Barjatiya movie, I would say, where you have the very perfect, the very ideal Indian family with all the relations who are together in the same scene, in the same place for some reason, all talking in exaggerated and very idealistic terms about each other. So this is where the movie begins, and the opening says, "Oh, is ghar mein se kisi ka naam pehli baar paper mein aaya hai," which is a big thing for a middle class family. And so this is exposition starts at a very high point, but then immediately after that we see that this universe is very different from the Suraj Barjatiya universe, because immediately you have the anti-climax that follows, where we see that right outside the home a garbage truck comes and places a huge garbage dump where all the residents of the colony come and heap their garbage. Then you see the very odd character of a father who has all these out of order old telephones, and he can never figure out which one is ringing, but he keeps sitting and repairing each one of those, and he's someone who smokes 3 cigarettes at once. Then there is the brother of Meenakshi, who rounds up for these stray dogs at night all the time and fosters them in their home. And then you have this grandmother of Meenakshi, who is shown to be blind. She's always wearing these dark spectacles, and she has all golden teeth, and she has a motorized wheelchair, and she keeps roaming from one end of the home to another. And although she's shown to be blind, she's shown to be someone with the most keen observation, as in she doesn't need to see in order to understand what is happening. So with this, we see that on the surface level, what appears is never actually true in Meenakshi's world and in the universe of AIYYA. So Kundarkar starts by showing us the stereotypical middle class family, and immediately with the anti-climax, as he reveals the very eccentric nature of each of the personalities, he breaks that stereotype, he breaks that mold, and introduces us to his first idea, that is, things are not what they seem, or every family has a set of eccentric and oddball characters, and probably that is more normal than the normalized depiction of the great Indian family that typically happens. So when you open the newspaper advertisement, we have the description of Meenakshi that she has all the qualities of an ideal Indian wife, and funnily enough, under that she has all the qualities of the typical Balaji serial daughter-in-law. So this is what Kundalkar pursues later in the movie as well. That is, he again and again brings in the role of art or the role of media depictions and their impact on our social imagination, on our cultural imagination and the expectations they create in this narrative. So the reference to the Balaji daughter-in-law talks about how the socio-cultural expectations of this class to a great extent are influenced by media or cinematic depictions, and this is the depiction that is aspired to or pursued by this class. And so the description of Meenakshi in the newspaper advertisement is absolutely like that. And so based on that, the Meenakshi that we expect to see is the one which is on the left hand side. And I'm sure that any one from the audience who is a Maharashtrian, I think one of the most entertaining aspects of this movie is the stereotypical depiction of Maharashtrians. And being one myself, I think I can safely say that without stereotyping the community, that the loose braid with the gajra, that is the flowers, the very long pallu of the sari, the silk sari with the what we call the kat padar, that is the border, the namaskar that Meenakshi does, her exclamations, which are Ishya Ayya Agabai. This is what she says every time she meets a prospective groom. The Chaha Pohe episode, which is how typically an arranged marriage setup occurs in the Maharashtrian setup. There is when a prospective groom meets a prospective bride, this is what the menu is. So this has typically become a metaphor for the arranged marriage setup. So that is the Meenakshi that we expect, the ideal Maharashtrian mulgi. But the Meenakshi that we get, who she actually is the one we see on the right, which is, also Maharashtrian, but she's embodying the one grooving on the Lavani, the one who wants to be a heroine. And on the left hand side, she's singing a bhajan, that is the role playing Meenakshi. But in reality, in her actual inner world, Meenakshi is the one who's telling God, I'll offer you $1 if you make me a heroine. And this heroine needs to be a commercially successful actress for her. So that is her aspiration. So it starts with this family, it starts with this character at the center of the family, and starts by telling us that things as they appear on the surface are not how they are beyond it. And then we get into the second stereotype that I think the director deliberately creates, which is the stereotype of the Bollywood masala pot boiler movie. So I would say that Kundarkar's choice is very deliberate in that what he does is he takes all the parameters that or all the ingredients that belong to a typical Bollywood movie. So first of all, the plot is simplistic. So we have only one central conflict in the movie, that is, whether Meenakshi will pursue her desires or not. And after that, the dinuma, that is the unraveling of the conflict, is also simplistic. I will come to that at the end. So, it has one conflict and then everything resolves itself at the end, which is the formula of the commercial Bollywood movie. But on top of that, what he also gives us is an elaborate song and dance sequence. So we have an opening song, we have an opening song which is introducing the heroine, which is the protagonist. Then we have a title song, that is the title of the movie appears in that song. We have something that comes very close to an item number. I think that the reason this movie was remembered was because of that only one song, which was Dreamam Bekapam. Yes, so as I was saying, it offers us the complete range of the list of song and dance sequences also in a commercial Bollywood movie. And I think this is where, when we look at the reviews of the movie, the critics start getting divided. So a lot of them believe that the concept and the story could have been dealt with in the style of, some give examples of French cinema and so on. But I think Kundalkar wants to make a point, which is what I have mentioned at the right-hand side, which is, why can't a commercial movie explore the desire of this kind of a quixotic female character? in various plots of countless movies, we have this quixotic male character. And by quixotic, I mean someone who has absolutely outlandish imagination and aspirations or ideals and expectations from their world. And we see the male protagonist working towards that and almost making it a reality, or we see these impossible plots coming true. So why can't a movie explore that when it comes to uh, the question of a female? And if we find that questionable, or if we find that uncomfortable, then that is raising certain important questions about gender depictions in cinema. So in the beginning, the opening song of the movie, we see that why is like what really is Meenakshi. We get a view of that in the opening, which very interestingly begins in a cavern. So you see inside a cavern or a cave-like place, there is a camera, a film camera. There is also the clap for the shot that's hanging from the top, and we see Meenakshi performing in front of them. And I personally find this depiction of a cavern very interesting, because it's literally trying to tell us that here we are entering the caverns of Meenakshi's subconscious, or the insides of Meenakshi's subconscious. What is her inner world like? And that inner world like is what you see in the frame at the bottom of the slide, which is, she is the protagonist of a complete melodramatic movie, replete with costumes and dialogues and dramatic plots. And she's at the center of it all. She's at the center of the drama. That is who she wishes to be. But the foil to that is her reality, where every evening at 6 p.m. and 9 p.m., there is a chaha pohe event that occurs at her home, because after her mother has advertised her as a prospective bride in the newspaper, every day at 6 p.m. and 9 p.m., there is a groom who arrives with his family for the what in Marathi would be called Baghण्याचा Karyakram, which is literally coming to the bride's place to look at the bride and her home and interact with her family. So we see in these meetings Kundarkar playing on the idea of acting or role playing. So Meenakshi in her imaginary world is this Bollywood superstar with whom we associate ideas such as melodrama or acting. But that is the reality for this protagonist. And on the other hand, what she's doing in this world, which is acting like the ideal bahu or daughter-in-law for any family, is actually role playing. And funnily enough, and very interestingly, we actually have the dialogues of Meenakshi's mother in such a way in the movie, where she'll go and prompt Meenakshi, dialogue bol ke dikhao. Even when Meenakshi with her parents visits the place of her prospective husband, that's Manav Rajadhyaksh, which we can see in the top frame of this slide. Her mother goes and prompts in her ear, dialogue bol ke dikhao. So Meenakshi immediately launches into, Madhav kahan hai? Main chaha pohe bana ke laun. So we can see that, in her typical interjections, in the way that she just bats her eyelashes and, unnecessarily keeps acting coy and shy, and goes and does this namaskar. And her mother saying the rehearsed dialogue in front of all the prospective families who come to look at and meet Meenakshi. That is actually where the role playing is happening, whereas the reality is something very different. So I think in these moments, Kundarkar is questioning our ideas of what is reality and what is acting. And is Meenakshi's dream world really where she's acting? Is it really melodramatic, or is her real world more dramatic than that? Is it more artificial than that? Is a question that he's raising. And interestingly, everything about her is defined by cinema. So this is also, I think, a humorous detail where the grooms come at 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. as if they are movie show timings. But then what is on show during these hours is Meenakshi herself and not movies. But we know that constantly what is in the backdrop of this meeting between Manav Rajadhyaksh and Meenakshi is the cinematic, imaginary, aspirational world of Meenakshi, which has been portrayed onto this wall, which has cutouts of all the actors and actresses. And I don't know if many of us have noticed it, but Meenakshi's own pictures are also on this wall, a lot of them. So this is essentially where she sees herself. Also, it is interesting to note that on the entire wall, you only have all male actors, all the male superstars of Bollywood, from Akshay Kumar to Shah Rukh and Amir and everyone. There isn't a single female actor except Meenakshi. So this is also where, in a very subtle manner, Kundarkar is making this equation between why can't a female actor as well as female character like this be on the same plane as in a commercial Bollywood movie, have the movie riding on her shoulders and have the story be all about her, and why can't it be successful? He takes a shot in this movie. Now, when we look at Manav Rajadhyaksha's character, we see that the story moves away from questioning the stereotypes of Bollywood cinema, the masala Bollywood film, to actually also taking a dig at the stereotype of the art house parallel cinema, which shows real people in their real worlds, real life like depictions, and so-called real love stories. So that brings me to the next stereotype, which is the romantic hero of realistic cinema. So we have this character of Madhav Rajadhyaksh, who does not dress much, he is not showing off his great physique on screen. He doesn't break into song and dance sequences except once when they are walking in the garden and he sings Tumko Dekha To Ye Khayal Aaya, which is again prompting our memories related to these movies. And he is a huge fan of Farooq Sheikh and Deepti Nawal. And as you can see in the frame at the bottom of the slide, he's completely aghast when Meenakshi says, "Oh, I have never watched a Farooq Sheikh and Deepti Nawal movie." Now, what is interesting about this exchange is that we may judge as an audience Meenakshi for constantly being in the world of cinema and of trying to build her reality based on the almost impossible depictions in this escapist cinema that Bollywood is. But then we see that here is a person like Madhav who seems very simple and very pragmatic and very real on the surface, but who is equally nursing similar stereotypes, who's equally aspirational, and whose ideas of life are equally built and structured from the cinema that he has consumed. And therefore, we see his obsession with Deepti Nawal. On the top frame, we see, Kundarkar almost copying the typical frames that or visuals that you come across in this kind of parallel art house cinema of a hero who's tending to his gardens. He's very much a guy next door. He's very pragmatic. He doesn't show any of the macho characteristics that are the protagonist of our masala movies typically shows. So as the points on the slide say, first, we have Madhav as a foil to Meenakshi's escapism. As escapist, Meenakshi is as realistic Madhav is. Secondly, we see his characteristics. He's very pragmatic, very practical person. When he comes to pick up Meenakshi for a visit or a walk in the park, he doesn't even remove his helmet. He just very silently comes and he indicates to her that, "Oh, come take a seat on my bike." So he is very pragmatic. He's very matter of fact about everything. He has a very balanced personality. He's shown to be very thoughtful. And here there are some important scenes in the movie where Meenakshi actually thanks him for saying that, "You are the first man who ever asked me what I want." And this is, I think, the hallmark of this realistic romantic hero, that he's thoughtful. He's thinking about the equality between the man and the woman in this kind of relationship, which typically does not get depicted in such terms in the commercial cinema. And above everything, he's also appreciative of Meenakshi's quirks. So he sees her daydreaming and he sees her breaking suddenly into a Tamil song for no reason and so on. But he doesn't get appalled much by all of this, and he still accepts Meenakshi in spite of all this. So when we look at a character like Madhav, he's almost like, the ideal man. And one direction, therefore, that this story could have taken, as these kind of stories often take in other plots, is that, oh, Meenakshi's eyes are suddenly open to reality. And she realizes that the escapist world that I'm aspiring for is actually not for me. It is not real. It is not attainable. And therefore, I must accept and welcome with open arms this man who is bringing balance and stability and thoughtfulness in my life and opening my eyes to the pragmatic world, or how real romance happens. That is one direction the story could have taken. But it is not the direction that the story takes. And that is because the central theme of this story is not which of the two romances is real, which of the two worlds is real, but it is sexuality and desire of the woman. And therefore, it does not question Meenakshi's aspirations for even a single moment. But every single time the movie is asking the question, why not? Why can't she not try to attain what she truly aspires? And even if it is the escapist cinema, even if it is that imaginative, melodramatic, impossible world, why not? And this begins first. The first metonym that we have for Meenakshi's desire in the movie is her heightened sense of smell. Now, smell, of course, is an indirect reference to her budding sexuality, her growing sexual desire, because of course it is associated with the sparking of pheromones, which of course is associated with attraction and temptation and all those ideas. So smell for Meenakshi is the defining factor because it contrasts between what she desires, which is Surya, and what she's disgusted by, which is the garbage truck. So the reality of her home is defined by the smell of the garbage truck. That is the reality she wants to constantly reject. And on the other hand, what she's aspiring for is defined by the smell of this artist Surya. It is equally what helps her contrast between these two possible romances that could be there in her life. So we see that in the very first time that Meenakshi and Madhav have a one-to-one interaction with each other, which is inside Meenakshi's bedroom. That is what the frame at the bottom is showing. She tries to go and smell him. And after like sniffing him, she says, normal, normal. That's what she says. But the moment she says that, it means and it shows that she does not find him exciting. So it is also the contrast between excitement and boredom. And the spectrum that Meenakshi is interested in is the spectrum where desire is exciting. So this borderline that Meenakshi keeps negotiating in the entire movie, it takes a more personified depiction in the library where Meenakshi works. Now, this library is a space which we can consider to be a metaphor for Meenakshi's inner space, where her budding exploration of her desire is battling with the I wouldn't want to say the darker side, but the other side, the unexplored side of her desire, which is untamed, which may also be called wild, which is unbridled, that is that which is just waiting to break through the surface. And this other side of her desire, which she's yet to explore, which is untapped, is what gets depicted or personified in the figure of Maina. So Maina, again, is, I think, one character that makes everyone uncomfortable about this movie. It makes it difficult to define and categorize. Is this almost Lady Gaga-like character. In fact, she, in my view, also dresses and acts like a dominatrix. And so Maina is not a foil to Meenakshi, I would say, but she's almost like Meenakshi's alter ego. It is that side of Meenakshi which she still has some trepidation in exploring. And whenever Meenakshi is in the borderline of this land of embracing or accepting her reality versus trying to access her desires, trying to tap into that inner world of that dormant sexual desire, it is often indicated in the movie using colors, and especially the color yellow. So every time Meenakshi is shown in the background of the color yellow or around shades of yellow, we see her trying to negotiate this boundary line. And so here, therefore, also in this scene, we see her wearing this yellow colored dress. So I want to focus on this scene on the top of the slide, which is Maina on top of the table dancing away and Meenakshi being almost afraid and challenged by looking at her. And this scene is very interesting because it is almost like Meenakshi being gripped by trepidation and fear of meeting or coming face to face with another side of her own self, with the world of desire, sexuality, which is something untapped because of the specific class and caste upbringing that she hails from and which she comes from. And that is what this scene stands for. And the idea that Maina could be Meenakshi's alter ego is something that is, I think, hinted at by the fact that Maina comes down from the table and she says that today I had missed my Bollywood dance class, so I was rehearsing that. So Bollywood is the common factor between the two, but Meenakshi's exploration of Bollywood is something that is still a little restrained. It is something that's formulaic, and Maina's, on the other hand, is this unrestrained, almost wild embracing of that side of her aspirations. So, in many ways, we can see in the contrast between Maina and Meenakshi, the contrast between desire and fetish. And therefore, we see Maina also carrying these red colored water bottles, which we later come to know contains vodka and not water. So there are these fetishistic objects, or the pen drives that she wears in her neck, which contain unreleased movies. So basically, everything that is forbidden or censored is something that Maina completely, with abandon, embraces, and Meenakshi is daunted by that. So in the contrast between the two characters, but who are always side by side, who share a lot of common interests, we see the boundary line, the negotiation between desire and fetish, or between tamed or restrained sexual aspirations versus the untamed ones. Now, this is one part of Maina, but I would also like to focus on another part of Maina, which is when we look at her depiction. We might immediately associate her with this transgressive, liberated woman stereotype that is again typically available in Bollywood. So on the left hand side, I have a visual from the movie BV number 1, and on the right hand side, I think it's Kurbani and Zina Taman. So we see, I mean, if we compare the visual depictions, and I am sure we have seen many like these, this is how typically this so-called liberated woman dresses up. This is what her personality is like, that she doesn't believe in fitting into any kinds of frames, or rather in the way she carries herself, in everything about her, she is constantly challenging the existing norm. But this movie also questions that is a woman who looks like that from the outside actually liberated, or actually should we subscribe to this idea of the transgressive woman? Because when we look at Maina's role in Meenakshi's story, she's the one who's actually making her question everything about Surya. So she's the one who fills Meenakshi's heads with rumors like, you know what, he must be doing drugs. You know what, he comes from a very wealthy family, and even the scholarships that he has must have been achieved by some sort of connections. So Maina on the surface looks like a woman who has broken barriers, or who questions norms, or who questions received notions about everything. But when you look at the personality or the mind of Maina, she's actually the one who is reinforcing all kinds of stereotypes or rumors associated with a man who looks like Surya or who acts like Surya. So I think Kundalkar again first builds a stereotype of Maina, and then later immediately shatters it also. And towards the end, she also makes Meenakshi question that, love is not everything. You should get married to a man like Madhav, and later you can have an affair with a man like Surya, is what she says. And this brings us to the final stereotype which this movie explores, which is the unattainable, mad at the world bad guy, which is this artist who has red eyes, who sleeps in the day, works at night, has very aggressive reactions whenever his painting does not turn out the way he wants it to, and so on. And on the other hand, we have his very stereotypical depiction as almost an eye candy on screen. Many critics have also called this the objectification of the male figure in the movie. And at one level, I think, again, the stereotype the movie tries to build is that, oh, when the innocent, very respectable, very proper girl enters into uncharted territory, it is typically because she's attracted to this stereotypical bad guy. But when we reach the end of the movie, that is when we come to know that none of the rumors about this character are true, and there are certain very good or so-called respectable reasons why Surya is the way he is, why he sleeps in the day, why are his eyes always red, why does he have the personality that he does. So once again, we see here that a stereotype is first built and then it is shattered at the end. So I think the first this brings me to the end of the first half of my discussion, which is that person. What this movie does is it builds first every kind of stereotype, whether of a typical family depiction, whether of what a commercial movie should have, whether of who is the transgressive woman or who is this aggressive, macho, bad boy, who is almost used as a metaphor for temptation in commercial depictions. And it goes on, breaking at the foundations of each of these stereotypes, and therefore makes us question each one. And therefore, it brings us then to talking about the aspiration of Meenakshi herself. Yes, this movie explores sexuality, one through the smell and Meenakshi's desire, but secondly, it also questions how this sexuality is accommodated. It is not denied, but the moment Meenakshi's marriage is arranged or fixed with this Madhav Rajadhyaksh, and the first time she goes and meets with him, there is a very humorous scene where they show a tailor or a carpenter actually measuring Meenakshi's body up with a measuring tape. That is the frame that you see at the bottom of this slide. So it talks about how sexuality is so conveniently and in such a drastic way accommodated within the frame of marriage that the moment the marriage is fixed, Meenakshi's mother tells Manav, "Oh, why don't you go and meet her in the bedroom?" Or they are actually taking her physical measurements to identify what should be the size of the double bed that they are creating for Meenakshi and Madhav, which terrifies, disgusts, and almost appalls Meenakshi, but nobody else seems to bat an eyelid at this. So it is also questioning these kind of practices that occur, that on one hand, a woman's gradual exploration of her desire and sexuality is something that is considered wrong. It is something that is considered barred or transgressive. And on the other hand, this kind of thoughtless pushing of two individuals who are yet to even know each other into the zone of physical proximity and physical intimacy is considered to be something very normal. So again, it's making us question the idea of what is normal. So on the left hand is the Meenakshi who is being measured with a measuring tape, and on the right hand is the Meenakshi who is very gradually and very also boldly pursuing the desire that she feels within. And this is depicted in the movie through the blue color. Now, at the center of the movie is, of course, the depiction of the female gaze. I'm sure most of us who are conversant with scholarly discussions on cinema are aware of the work of this film scholar, Laura Mulvey, and her essay that was, I believe, published in 1975, which was Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema. So this was a seminal essay where Laura Mulvey spoke about how the commercial depiction of man-woman relationships in movies, or the visual depiction of the woman in cinema, is structured in order to appeal to the male gaze or to appeal to the male desire. And therefore, as spectators of movies, we are all forced to place ourselves within the frame of the man who is desiring, and therefore the woman is typically objectified. This is how simply I can summarize the argument of Mulvey. And this is completely reversed in the case of this movie. So this movie is from the point of view of the female gaze. It is Meenakshi's gaze. And this gaze and this slow blossoming of her sexual desire is captured through the color blue. So we have this very representative scene in the movie where Surya is making these, splatters or splashes of blue color on a blank canvas. The canvas could easily be taken to be the metaphor for Meenakshi's subconscious, because in the beginning when talking to Maina, Meenakshi says that मेरे सपनों में मैं अकेली ही दिखती हूँ. I see myself, there's nobody in my dreams, in my fantastical world. But now we see that there is someone making an inroads, and those inroads are depicted through the color blue. So you first see these splatters, but then on the right hand side top, you see a frame where a painting is created in completely blue shades, which is Meenakshi slowly from only being stirred by this desire to gradually developing it, allowing it to blossom, to completely painting her world of imagination from that lens. On the left hand side is another scene in the movie, which in the beginning she says that My dreams have open spaces, my dreams have a lot of sunlight, and in my dreams I'm alone. So I think this shot where you see Surya and Meenakshi with a lot of sunlight filtering in into an open corridor is important, because through the structuring of that visual we see the centrality of Surya as her chief point of desire, or her chief point of aspiration at this point. And then at the bottom, of course, we see the face of Surya being completely blurred by the blue color. And therefore, the color blue, because it becomes a metaphor for Meenakshi's sexuality, is shown in the scenes after this in highly tactile ways. That is, you see the blue color being mixed on the canvas. You see the process of mixing. You can almost feel the brush coming into contact with the canvas, the way it splatters, the way it moves. So we have this kind of visual imagery which is almost tactile in nature. That is, as spectators, we can almost feel how it must be feeling to the character on screen. And one criticism that is directed towards the depiction of Surya in this movie is that as women are typically stereotyped in commercial movies, so the man has been stereotyped here, or we know nothing about the complex layers of Surya's personality in this movie, and that is a lost opportunity. However, personally, I would like to differ with this reading, and for me, this frame that is there on our screens right now sums my argument up, which is that Surya in the movie is not a character, but he is just Meenakshi's desire. He is just Meenakshi's aspiration. So all we see, so we don't see really Surya, but we see Meenakshi's desire being personified in the form of Surya on screen. And why I chose this frame to represent that is because here you can see a very blurry image of Meenakshi. You see water and you see this blue color kind of clouding through it, which is, as I said, the slow, gradual intensification of Meenakshi's desire. And what this frame to me represents is that Surya is filtered through Meenakshi's imagination for us. So we see her imagination. We don't really see him as a character. He is not intended to be a complex character in the movie. And therefore, what Meenakshi wants is not the Farooq Sheikh. It is not tumko dekha to ye khayal aaya. What Meenakshi wants is this Southern masala, which she watches at midnight in order to learn the Tamil language. And we see that this is the point where in her imagination, her desire intensifies. It is no longer only about the blue color, but now it has become much more physical. It has almost become erotic and explicitly sexual in nature. And this is what the director, I think, is questioning, that if this is what she desires, why can't she have it? Why should depictions of female desires be artistic or oblique or indirect, etc.? If this is what she desires, which is often criticized to be objectifying women, but if it's a woman herself who desires it, is it objectification anymore or not? I don't have an easy answer to this question, but I would love to know the responses of the audience. And another thing that is supporting my idea that Surya is not a character separately, but Surya is Meenakshi's desire, aspiration, and imagination is this particular sequence in the movie, which is comparatively weak in the entire narrative. But here she's telling Surya's mother, when she pretends to be a sari seller and visits his home, that, surely our Surya will become Amir Khan. He may be a mad at the world artist right now, but soon he's going to become Amir Khan. This is very interesting because on the wall of heroes in Meenakshi's room, we see the depiction of all these heroes and especially a lot of reference to Amir Khan. And this is the dialogue that clinches it, where she says that I am not probably desiring Surya as a man who, because of his either his physique or because of his nature, which makes him unattainable, or because of his overall bad guy image, I don't aspire him for that. I am going to turn him into the man that I desire. It is not the reversal where she is turning into the woman that Surya desires, but Surya is being sculpted, molded, and defined as per her imagination. And I think this is where Kundalkar really genuinely remains within the frame of the female gaze and not even once steps outside of it, and therefore does justice to the depiction of the female gaze. And this is where the climactic dilemma happens. So we have a scene in the movie where she escapes from Madhav's home, and I think I'll just speed up my discussion a little bit. She escapes from Madhav's home and she enters this street following Surya. And on this street, we see Meenakshi frightened for the first time. Otherwise, she just boldly follows and trails him wherever he goes. But we see her frightened for the first time. And why is she frightened is because you have two depictions over here. On the top right hand corner of the slide, what you can see is this procession or the spectacle she sees of this community, which is called Kadak Lakshmi, which are kind of devotees or a practice of following the goddess in certain communities, where they tend to whip their own selves and dance in a kind of ecstasy. So this spectacle or the street through which Meenakshi passes is basically shown to be a street of sex workers. So as she passes through that, she on one hand looks at a very obscene or very explicit depiction of sexuality, and on the other hand, she sees a very heightened, raw, almost wild depiction of passion or ecstasy at its heights. And so this street, I believe, represents those dark alleys of Meenakshi's mind, which have been conditioned by her upbringing or by societal expectations of the respectability of a woman's desire or sexuality. So there are a lot of these dark stereotypes created in order to make the exploration of sexuality frightening, transgressive, or forbidden in the woman's mind. And this alley where she's following him and where she gets frightened for the first time is a depiction of how she's coming very close to the unraveling of her sexuality, or is daunted in a moment, is held back in that moment by these demons that are surrounding her mind. But she's carried forward through that experience just by this, once again, the smell of Surya, which, like I said, is the metonym of her very authentic desire. So she boldly follows that in spite of being daunted by these visuals around her, being daunted by these dark alleys. And therefore, after that, we have this titular song of the movie, where you see the very iconic belly dance by the protagonist with very explicit depictions of the sexual chemistry or the sexual attraction that she imagines in her mind, in her imaginative sequences between herself and Surya, which one of which is depicted at the end of this slide. But this is the climax, I call it, because this is where the dilemma reaches a high point. Now, before I move further from that, I would just like to show some visuals that some critics have talked about how Meenakshi pursuing Surya endlessly in so many sequences is either too long drawn out or it is problematic, because why is she doing that? Okay. But here are scenes from so many successful Bollywood movies or even cult Bollywood movies that we have watched over the years, where this is exactly what is happening. That is, the man is in hot pursuit of the woman all the time. He just sees her once, he knows nothing about her personality, and just keeps tailing her here, there, and everywhere, tries to get her possessions or tries to get her phone number or tries to get something about her. And in the case of the frame on the top hand right of this slide, which is from the movie Hasina Maan Jayegi, he even tries to strong arm her into accepting his advances. And this has never been considered abnormal or problematic in most discussions of these movies. So I think the director is asking the question, why should Meenakshi's hot pursuit of this man be considered problematic? That is one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it, in my view, is we understand how problematic or uncomfortable sequences like these are simply by reversing the gender roles in these sequences. When you see a man again and again in hot pursuit of a woman, we find it acceptable, normal, successful, everything, commercially, that is. But when you simply switch the gender roles and make a woman do the same thing that you normally find a man doing in these movies, we are suddenly hit by how problematic or uncomfortable that is. Right. So here on top is visual from a very recent movie, which was Rabta, Kriti Sanon and Sushant Singh. Then, of course, you have Rehna Hai Tere Dil Mein. And then you have two sequences which are almost identical. On the left-hand side, once again, Hasina Maan Jayegi. You have the sequence where the character of Govinda is secretively looking at, the woman character undressing herself without even revealing to her. And this is part of, a comedy which we watch with our families. And it's not problematic. And in Ayya, we have a similar sequence happening, and which to many of us may seem problematic or we may criticize that. Similarly, on the right hand side, we have a shot from Mehuna, where Shah Rukh Khan literally trails the character of this teacher everywhere that she goes. And it's the exact same sequence being depicted in this movie, but which has been found to be problematic in many places. But this is the climax, because this is where Kundalkar talks about how do these two pursuits of the man versus the woman unravel. In most of these movies from which I shared shots, after this pursuit, the man would just very boldly go and proclaim his affections and his attraction for the woman and make advances, which will be followed by a courtship, which will typically be followed by the two coming together. But does that happen in the case of Meenakshi? No, it doesn't, because we see that when it comes to the point where she must go boldly and tell Surya about how she feels about him, she cannot, because this is where she is held back by the frame within which she must act. That is the structure of gender roles or relationships within which she has been brought up or within which she survives does not allow a woman to make a similar proclamation to a man, though she may try a similar pursuit of a man. And that is why we see her hiding behind near the meter box of the building where Surya stays and then simply tailing him. And when she finally comes face to face with him at his agarbatti factory, she nearly faints. So this silence of Meenakshi versus the very bold pursuit of Surya that the Meenakshi does in the remaining movie, the very contrast between the two, I think, heightens the gender politics that Kundalkar wants to talk about through this movie. And so I would like to conclude my discussion with three problematics that critics have talked about in this movie. First of all, why does Meenakshi, who is a strong woman exploring her desire, exploring her sexuality, why does she faint at the end when she meets Surya? Does it not make this plot fit within the frame of the damsel in distress? So I would disagree with that. I say that in the entire movie, Meenakshi aspires for the escapist world. She is Alice in Wonderland. But it's not her dream world that is full of eccentric characters. It is actually her real world, which is full of eccentricity. And she wants the rabbit hole to be her reality. So we see her escaping every problematic situation throughout the movie again and again. So escapism is what she aspires, and that is what she gets. And even if she faints like the protagonist in a fairy tale at the end, I would say that this is a sequence that she wants in the plot of her movie, which she's playing in her mind all the time. And she engineers that plot and she gets it at the end. Second is the problematic sequence of Nana and Maina, which is in, I think, the very challenging song at the end of the movie. So many critics have said that Maina could have been played out as as a figment of Meenakshi's imagination. Why do they turn her into a real character and make her brother marry her? I say that Nana and Maina both represent taking desire to a fetishistic level and also questioning what is the problem with that. So while Meenakshi finds the reality of Surya, which is, contained within the frame of respectability towards the end of the movie, we have the foil to this containment in the characters of Nana and Maina, who don't try to restrain their world of fantasy within any respectable frame and who rather allow it to fully blossom unbound and to also clinch that, to achieve that and to turn that into their reality. So for Nana and Maina, it is not coming back from fantasy into reality, but rather turning their fantasy into their reality itself. So we are looking at an alternative possibility, an alternative universe. And finally, the stereotyping of Surya, I think I've already spoken about it, that why it is done in the movie, why he's almost shown as this kind of trophy man or this kind of eye candy on screen, which is typically how a woman is depicted, because it's not a character, but it is Meenakshi's desire, in my view. Just last few points of discussion in the movie is one, its use of color. So I feel it has used color very effectively. Yellow is typically used when Meenakshi is shown to be on the liminal, that is the borderland of uh, stepping within her unconscious, where her desire is unbridled, to staying on the borderlands of it. So that's where we see yellow. And when she truly embraces her desires, that's when you see blue on screen. You see her wearing the color blue more and more often. You see visuals on the screen depicting that more and more often. And I think finally what this movie very effectively does is talk about the meta cinematic, that is, make a comment on art itself. So the man here, I mean, this is an iconic scene in the movie where Surya is depicted as the thinking man, which was this sculpture of perfect masculine anatomy, and he is playing with the idea of the thinking man versus the man being offered up for the visual pleasure of a woman. And also in doing this, he is taking a lot of references, not just this one, but also look at this painting from Raja Ravi Verma, which is there in Meenakshi's home. You can almost look at the pose of the woman in the painting and the pose of Meenakshi's mother being the same. And I think in both places, Kundarkar is talking about how art or visual depictions, which also includes cinema, how they reign over our aesthetic or cultural imagination, how much they influence and grip our imagination and the way we structure our worlds. So this Raja Ravi Verma painting is how the characters in this world, in the real world of Meenakshi, want an ideal woman to be. This is how an alluring woman is in this universe, but this is the universe that is what Meenakshi aspires to. So once again, what is distinctive about this shot is that the art is on the walls is actually foregrounded, and the character at the center, Meenakshi, is almost right now standing as a kind of sculpture, which could be akin to any of these rather erotic sculptures that are available in different examples of architecture in Indian heritage. So I think he's using the contrast, the depictions of art to also talk about the representations of or the aspirations, sexual aspirations, cultural aspirations of each of the character, and is also questioning about what role does art or visual art play in structuring of our worlds. And therefore, I would like to conclude my discussion with this central question that the movie poses. Yes, it is about the female gaze and the female desire, which is very boldly treated in this discussion, in the treatment in this movie. But it's equally a movie making us pose the question of what is it that cinema does to us. When we think of our reactions to cinema, do we need to have an either or situation? Like, do we need to be either a Meenakshi aspiring completely to the commercial escapist depictions, or do we need to be the Madhavs who are only appreciative of the realistic, pragmatic, real life depictions? But is it possible for cinema to also try and navigate the boundary line between, like, when does fantasy or the fantastic burst through in reality, right? Is it problematic to have commercial escapism drive the desires of this woman protagonist in this almost parallel art house like cinema? Can we think of the dialogue or the interactions between the two? Can cinema be a more fluid space, and can the cinema that we aspire to, okay, in our, if I talk about our desire as voyeurs or as cinema goers in that sense, can we have more of a fluidity in our understanding of cinema? And therefore, I have chosen this scene where Madhav asks Meenakshi, so what kind of films do you like? Because I think that is how they judge each other. So I would like to end my discussion here with asking all of you the question of what kind of films do you like, and what is your idea? Should cinema be a more fluid space or not? And with that, I end my discussion. Thank you so much for patiently listening, and looking forward to the responses.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bageshree. It has been an absolutely delightful experience for us to, go through your entire presentation. It is so rich, so dense, and you have raised several important questions about intertextuality and the mixing of other art forms into cinema, and it's absolutely fascinating presentation. And this is now open for discussion. Well, when I watched the film Bageshree, I was also reminded of another Hindi film made in 2003, I think, by Chandan Arora, and that was called "Main Madhuri Dixit Banna Chahti Hoon." And even there, you have the protagonist, played by Antara Mali, where she's so obsessed with this, with the hero, with the film star Madhuri Dixit, and she actually sets out to, she leaves her small town and goes to Bombay to become a star. Of course, in the case of this movie, Ayya, there is no aspiration to become a star in that sense. But I thought, there were similarities in terms of the obsession with cinema in general.
Yes, actually, that is one movie that I think I've missed out on watching. I'm yet to watch it yet. Now I'll definitely delve into it. But even given that, there's also an interesting Marathi movie that had come out recently. I forget the name of the actor. Is a very well-known Marathi actor. It also had Amitabh Bachchan playing a kind of guest appearance, and it was also again about this man who says that Amitabh Bachchan was my childhood friend, and then how he keeps acting like him, or he keeps showing his friends, this is how he would be, that is how he would be, and so on. But what I find interesting about, or what I would love to know about "Main Madhuri Dixit Banna Chahti Hu" is that how does this plot play out? That is, is it a journey from her having some aspirations to then her having to face the reality of becoming Madhuri Dixit, or
Yeah,
what
I mean,
happens? Like, does it?
if you want to watch the film, maybe I shouldn't really spoil it
Okay,
for you. But
right.
yeah, I mean, like, unlike this film, it's a pretty much expected kind of a trajectory.
Okay, all right. So for me, I've always enjoyed Ayya for this reason that at the end we almost expect that at some point this bubble will have to break, at some point Meenakshi will
Yes,
have to face the reality, but that's what
that
made it
never.
so appealing to me, that the story allows her to stay within that world. And there's a very funny, I think, sequence in the last song, which is Vakada. So Vakada means odd, uh strange. I mean,
Crooked,
it can mean
yeah,
many things, like
crooked.
slant. Yeah. So that's where she's once again imagining that there are all these people, I think, showering flower petals on them, and she keeps just moving her head, and it's happening in her mind, and everyone else, including Surya, is just looking at her in that moment, that what is happening. But then everyone breaks into laughter because they all know or accept and celebrate the fact that this is who she is. She's someone who just keeps switching between the real and imaginative worlds with such ease, and that is something accepted about her. Nobody tries to change it. That's what I found very interesting.
Yes, Nikhila, please go ahead.
Bageshree, thank you very much, first of all, for your wonderful presentation. It was very, very enjoyable, insightful. All I knew about Ayya was the Dream Wake Up song. So I'm so glad that I watched the film on your recommendation, because I enjoyed it thoroughly. One of the things that it can be a little off-putting is its wackiness, its tone, You know, as you keep watching the film, and after watching the film too, I was kind of trying to think about this peculiarity of the tone of the film, which is like a melodrama over a melodrama, or a melodrama of a melodrama. So a meta melodrama, if one can call it that. Which you know, is which also makes the film a kind of mimicry for fun, and so on. But I think what I also felt about that peculiar tone is that the film is mocking. Of course, you know, there is a sense of mockery, as you said. It deconstructs a whole lot of stereotypes. But what I found very interesting was that it deconstructs certain how do you talk about an upper caste family which thinks of itself in some ways as the acme of everything, you know, as superior? And here is this, you know, film laughing at how dirty the mother is, that she does not mind that there is garbage outside. You know, so there is so, I mean, what could have become very offensive, this tone, you know, which does not allow us to take anything seriously, is being used with great effect. Also to laugh at the quirkiness, the upper caste family, which is through its own gaze would like to see itself as prim and proper. It is the, I mean, this gaze of the outsider is required to show it as quirky, teda, you know, totally mad, from within, from inside, and in the accepted normal way. You know, all these may be very difficult. So I think this irreverential tone is very essential to deconstruct the upper caste family itself. It uses, of course, Meenakshi, and it is her perspective in some ways, you know, which I think here it is an outsider's perspective, which also gets mediated through Meenakshi. Because at some point she also says, my family is totally, you know, mad, and so on. So it is that I thought which was done in a fantastic way. I really enjoyed that. And of course, as you said, this idea of female sexuality. I mean, how many films do you get like this, where you know, it is I mean, there is no hiding of, or there is no, it's not sexuality through indirection, but it is very direct, in your face. And so why not? So that seems to be the tone with which the film is operating. I liked it very much for the challenge it poses to so many things that one holds dear, but also that it does it through a female protagonist. And Rani Mukherjee, I thought, was just fantastic in the film. You couldn't take your eyes off her. So, you know, I mean, I mean, whether it was in the dream sequences or where she's acting as the respectable middle-class family girl, I thought all that came through wonderfully. So thanks for suggesting this film, Bageshree, and thanks for the discussion.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that it gave you an opportunity to watch it. And I think what you said is absolutely the two words that you used. One is irreverence. I think that is the spirit of the movie. And secondly, what makes it truly distinctive is that it takes a female protagonist and explores her sexuality and puts her in an upper caste family, and then uses this tone, which is very rarely used in these sorts of depictions in order to deal with so many questions. And I think that is what makes it truly very different. I think we have one hand raised.
Yeah, please go ahead, Jayana.
I'm so glad I did it. I'm a doctor student at the MS University,
I'm sorry,
and
you're
my
not.
research then.
No, you're not. It's not clear. There's something wrong with the audio.
Okay, let me step out. Am I
Yeah.
audible now?
Yeah, it's better. It's better.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So yeah, hi. My name is Jaina, and I'm doing. I mean, I'm a doctoral student at the MS University, and my research guide actually suggested me to attend this, and I'm so glad that I did. Part of my study is that I'm going to content analyze some of the movies that represents how adults were in the movies, like from like 8 decades. And I'm so glad that I attended this because I learned so many new terms. And also the movie, it's just like I had a few scenes and I was like, no, it's not for me. But now when I heard all this, I saw all this presentation and all these different aspects, I think I'll watch this movie again and probably with a different perspective, and I think I'm going to like it. In fact, I can't wait to, like, start this movie and watch. So thank you. It was a great presentation and I learned so much for my study as well, and for the movie and how to look at it. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much, Jaina. That's really kind of you to say it, and I'm so glad. I think in a film discussion group like this, if any discussion is
Yeah.
making one want to watch the movie again or want to watch more movies, that is
Yeah,
successful in itself. And I completely
true.
agree with you. In fact, I must confess that the first time even I watched this movie, like Nikhila ma'am was saying earlier, it does make you uncomfortable in many places. I
Yeah.
mean, the character of the librarian Maina, or especially the penultimate song of the movie between Nana and Maina. I mean, I personally found it so difficult to digest, but then as I thought more and more about it, I just kept wondering that how actually these kind of sequences or depictions are so normal, have been so normalized in a lot of content that we have been consuming, and we have never questioned it. But the moment we change the, I think, gender structure of the same things, the problem at the
Yeah.
heart of it really hits us. And I also found that movie so interesting. And being a Maharashtrian, I also found many of the stereotypical depictions quite entertaining. So both ways, I'm
Yeah,
glad that.
right.
Yeah,
It's just so
Jenny.
nice.
Sorry,
Yes.
Jenisha has raised her hand. Please go ahead.
Thank you for this brilliant presentation. I actually did learn a lot. My name is Janisha. I have a few, well, I'm not sure whether these are questions or certain things that are just playing in my mind. I watched the film when it came out. So, first of all, I was very taken aback by the casting of Rani Mukherjee as someone who aspires to be a Bollywood, not aspires, but actually imagines and lives in a fictional world of being a Bollywood performer or an actor or something, a character, Bollywood character. So that itself is a very meta commentary on the whole film itself, which actually is, I thought that was cemented by the kind of the wall poster that she makes of the Bollywood actors in her bedroom, because she herself is a Bollywood, as Rani Mukherjee is a Bollywood actress before this, which is who is known for like all these stereotypical roles that the film actually sets up and then breaks down. So to put her in this position of a kind of a character who imagines herself to be such a commercial Bollywood performer or a Bollywood character is also very telling. Secondly, I also wanted to ask, because I completely agree with the whole stereotype framework that you are trying to show through your presentation of this film. But I just wanted to ask, how much of the film do you think is citational? I mean, you did talk a little bit about the intertextuality, and because this citational thing is kind of playing in my mind in a way that, like, you talked about Laura Mulvey's female gaze, but then when she actually dreams, or when she actually lives in her imaginative world, it's again the kind of the world that she falls back into the trap of becoming the kind of the object of the male gaze, which is again cemented by the kind of the so-called item number in the end, that with Surya that she does. So that kind of did not I don't know how to put it, but because there is one way of looking at it, yes, that there is, she has a very rich inner world of where she escapes to a world that she has built on her own. She's in control of that world. But again, at the end, when you see that this world is again a kind of a fictional or a stereotypical world of Bollywood commercial cinema, where she herself thinks of herself as a kind of object of the male gaze. So how do you put that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, I would say. And it is a question it is the kind of question for which I said that as much as I love coming here and discussing, I look forward to the discussion more. So I have some views on it, and I would love to hear your own on it. I think this is a question that has come to my mind a lot of times with regard to a lot of movies, not just this one, but even, the more art house movies, the kind of movies trying to break the mold and present a more critical representation of, the female desire or the female gaze, end up actually depicting women in ways where one wonders whether are they not repeating the same catch 22 of in depicting the woman's gaze, but still depicting the woman on screen in such a way that she is becoming an object of male gaze or male desire. So yes, I think this is a dilemma. This is a catch 22. I wouldn't say there is an easy answer to this. However, with regard to this movie, I would like to say two things. One is that I feel that yes, in the South Indian masala kind of presentation of the Dreamum Wake Upum song, I think that song is almost a kind of spin off. Like in her imagination, she imagines herself and Surya playing the roles of the two actors she sees on screen in the TV. So probably that song is like that. But other than that, if we look at the other song in the movie, the one with the belly dance, then you see that the man is being depicted more as this object of her desire, more in a stereotypical manner. The man is actually being reduced to just his physique and his body, and as, an object of sexual desire, if we look at that song. So I think maybe in that song the tonality, I mean, the depiction of the man in that form has been toned up a little bit, and the woman has been toned down a little bit, I would say. That's one thing. And another thing, in response to your question, I would say is that is what I said in my presentation, is that the director is, I think, trying to make us question this also, that why would we like to also school the female gaze, or why would we want to school female desire? And I think that is why he puts in this character of Madhav, who is trying to turn Meenakshi's affections or her desire in the mode of how these things get depicted in these so-called intellectual movies, where things are depicted in very respected manner, where there's an equally respectful depiction of the man and the woman, etc. But I think what Kundalkar is saying is that if this is what that woman is desiring in her own dreams, then why would we try to even school her gaze or school her desires or ideas also? And she is, I mean, she in the movie, she does say that I have read Alice in Wonderland, it's my favorite novel, I've read it 100 times. So we see her as a character who seeks the escapist world. And we often, as critics of cinema, we often criticize commercial cinema for it being escapist, for it not dealing with the real world problems. But here he's saying that when we talk about desire, it could be about anything, and this character's desire is for escapism. So should we, or why would we try to school that desire into something that's right or politically correct? I think that's an uncomfortable question, but I think this film is raising that question too, in my view. That's what I feel, and I would love to know if you feel something different or opposite.
No, I completely agree with you here, but I also thought that, like, probably that, you know, because again, as at the start of your presentation, you already acquainted us, or we already know, as you know, the kind of the media images that we are kind of stimulated with, or the kind of the media that we are actually constantly consuming, is a very skewed gender divide, which is why in commercial cinema, I think, because she watches commercial cinema, that is how her fantasies are also evolving in that way, because it is being fed by commercial cinema. So yeah, it does ask the question, yes, that why can't we let the woman dream as she wants to dream? But it's also asking the question that we are also feeding that dream by actually you know, railroading a certain kind of a certain image of a woman in in our throats. So that way, I think he's also on. I think on one hand, he is also criticizing the kind of the images that we are consuming to have our fantasies decide, or have our fantasies kind of depend on these kind of images, that we can't dream of anything very independent of uh, uh, Bollywood cinema to have something as escapist route. So yeah, I do agree with you in that. I completely agree with you on that. But that is, I think, what I feel as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand, and even I fully agree with you there. That's exactly where I was going in talking about the sequence where, you know, she keeps pursuing him, or she enters his home or his bedroom and tries to find out information about him, which I would say that as a viewer also makes me sometimes uncomfortable, that is it right to do something like this now? You know, this can't be correct. But then I think that's what he's probably trying to do, in my view, is trying to make us question that yes, this is problematic, but then we have been watching this, you know, for such a long time, depicted in such a normal way, in so much content coming our way. And if we feel like questioning this, then we must question that also. So I agree with you that using stereotypical depictions is making us question exactly what kind of depictions, you know, our minds have been filled with for a long time, and whether they need to start changing, or we need to you know, break free from those also. I agree with you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
yeah,
Bageshree.
I think you're right, because the quintessential stalker has always been the male. And then now, you know, when it is the female, then it is seen as problematic. So I think that's what the director is trying to question, as you rightly said. Any other comments, questions? Yes.
Hello.
Yes, Jen.
Yeah, I so, like prefer.
I'm sorry,
I
but
mean, of course,
your audio is breaking. The voice is breaking.
yeah. Let me get out. Okay. So I mean, this is more like for my study. I want to know, like, can you refer to any scholars or film scholars or references that one could use to have such a critical, like, you know, critical perspective to understand a movie like this, like, you know, how you analyzed it. So yeah, could you help me with that?
I think that can be done privately between you and Bageshree.
Yes,
Yeah,
true.
yeah. And also maybe you could, attend more of the TFO sessions to familiarize yourself with, certain methodologies and terminology as well.
Mm. I just joined the group on
Yeah,
WhatsApp, sorry, on
sure.
Facebook. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
sure.
I look
Welcome.
forward to attending that. Yeah, thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions, comments about this particular film or about Bageshree's presentation? There is a comment here from Vedant Sumant, romanticization of the very concept of being a woman. And I think earlier, Fabian says, thanks so much for this presentation. I'm sorry I have to leave. And there are two other, there's one from Naina Trivedi, very well presented critique of movie, raising poignant questions about potential choices of the viewers. It was sheer pleasure listening to you, Bageshree. And there's another one, there's no name, it just says iPhone. Very good presentation, well covered under all aspects, absolute pleasure. Yeah. Any more questions? Would anyone like to say anything about the film? Yes, Tarkeshwar, please go ahead.
Thank you, Geeta. Thank you, Bageshree, for the presentation. It was wonderful listening to you and the analysis. What I felt was there was unnecessarily there was a tone of trying to defend the movie and the movie maker against certain kind of criticism. If you take it away, then your analysis still stands very good. So because you had taken up this task of trying to defend the movie and attributing what you are reading up the movie to the movie maker, you are put in a kind of position to defend everything that is there on screen. So except that, I think it was a good analysis. And the second point is about it is not simply about the sexuality of a woman or a transgressive woman, but as you yourself say in one of the slides, who is represented as a transgressing woman. If it is Naina, it's okay. Because she doesn't have a kind of caste background that the Rani Mukherjee has. Because she is from abroad, her parents are abroad, promiscuity and then some kind of transgression is permitted to her. And in Indian movies, we see that a transgressive woman is always, if not a kind of sex worker, at least she will be a secretary, will have a Christian name, or she will be of lower caste and things like that. Here, a kind of upper caste woman is being shown as transgressive, not though not physically, but in terms of her desires. And also, as you rightly pointed out, it is not simply about her desires, but also she thinking herself as a tamasha woman, a Lavani singer, and a Lavani dancer. So that kind of transgression, not only in terms of sexuality, but also in terms of caste, that complicates the things. And we don't have to attribute everything to the filmmaker. And we don't have to counter everything that the critics have said about the film. What is the argument that we are making becomes more important. And your reading is fine. Sans, I thought this unnecessary act of trying to defend the filmmaker vis-a-vis the critics. Thank you for the presentation.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for those comments. Very pertinent. Like I said in the beginning, I feel there's still a lot more than could be said. There's a lot that can be said about this movie. I think we could just have a discussion only about the songs or only about how art and this has been treated and so on. But because of the nature of this discussion, I chose to focus on just one major thrust area. But absolutely, your comments regarding who can be the transgressive woman and the Lavani in the beginning, all that are very well taken. And just to clarify, my intention was not to defend the movie against the critics, but and in my last presentation that I made for TFO, I have not really paid attention much to what was the critical attention for this movie. But what I chose to do in this particular movie is not that I disagree with everything that the critics said. I do agree with some parts of it also, though I have not spent too much time in discussing that today here. Uh, but why I said that is that I found certain major reservations in the critical reviews of the movie. And in this discussion, I focused on the critics mainly because this movie was released and meant to be a commercial movie, which meant that the reviews actually mattered a lot. And the reviews impacted the audience's views of the movie, like whether more audiences went to the theaters or not. And so for that reason, I found it rather surprising that there are many aspects, whether, as Nikhila ma'am mentioned, the tone of the movie, or as you mentioned, a lot of fundamental depictions about what woman coming from what caste class background can do what, and so on, has been questioned in the movie quite effectively. But I felt that the places where the movie is actually trying to do that were received in a very different way in almost all the critical reviews, which I personally found surprising, including a lot of critics that I tend to read. Therefore, I thought that because this is a commercial film and there is a propensity for a lot of audience to go by the reviews before actually getting into the movie, so I thought it's probably for this particular discussion a good idea to kind of address where the movie was criticized, but where I differed from those criticisms. That is the only reason. Otherwise, I feel like whether it is about the critics or whether I come here and interact with everyone like you, I look forward to the disagreements always. I think they always enrich our understanding of anything. So anyway, having said that, thank you for your comments. And regarding I think Jaina or Janisha's earlier question, I'm just sharing my email ID in the chat if anybody wants to write me regarding any very specific personal question.
Yeah. Madhurima? Yeah, sure.
Madhurima comes just to make one very minor point, and that is, Bageshree, you might be interested to know that, as you said, when the film released, it got very poor criticism. I mean, got very poor reviews. There were lots of criticism. But in the last 2 years, I think 2023, Film Companion has kind of revisited the film. I think First Post also. So these are there are people who feel that like you. This is a film that should be watched. So in that sense, it seems more relevant to watch it today than probably in its own time. Yeah. Sorry, Geeta, and I'll stop here.
No, that's okay. Yeah. Madhurima, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I just had 2 points. First is I thank you for your presentation. I was really looking forward to it because your last presentation was really interesting. Yeah. So the 1 or 2 points that I had, one is regarding how marriage is represented as well as parodied. So marriage is actually presented as a commercial and material act. So when Meenakshi's mother says that new age, new type of advertisement, so she is actually parodying the act of marriage as well as aspiring for it. That was a very interesting narrative technique in the way it is played out. The other point is that if I am locating the movie in today's context, like 2024 context, so there are many memes and sort of reels that talk about, this red flag, green flag, this dialectic. So who fits into the character of red flag and who fits into the character of green flag? I think that is very well played out. Actually, it is not played out at the end, but till before the end, how Sujya's character gets deconstructed. Before that, it was very much like Madhav was the green flag and Sujya has all the characteristics of the a red flag character. But in the end, I felt like it was all very convenient for the plot because in the beginning, Meenakshi was like, I felt it. What would happen is that probably Meenakshi would go back to Madhav, or probably Meenakshi would not want to marry at all, because when she takes up the job, she says that maybe I want to rent a small space for myself, maybe I want to read more books. And then the other character, Maina, talks about marriage and all. Then she talks about how love is associated with marriage and all. But actually, till the end, there is no love happening. I mean, there is no reciprocal love happening. But even then, she agrees to get engaged to Shirja, or having a future with Surya. So I felt that the ending was very convenient to some extent, because Shirja has to fit into this green flag, or to this ideal character of a man who is marriageable. Yeah, that was a bit disappointing for me. That is all. The other point that I had, it is a very minor point, because in the beginning we had this Nana and his association with the dogs, and then Meenakshi says something about, yeah, she calls them as dogs, and he says they have their own names. How can you call them as dogs? So that has a kind of undertone of the post-human aspect, but it never really comes to the front. Yeah, so on these aspects, I find the movie quite interesting. Like, it can be interpreted in today's context to some extent. Thank you, ma'am, for your presentation.
Thank you so much, Madhurima. Those are very keen observations. You are right. I think the red flag, green flag also plays out in a very minor manner in Meenakshi's parameter, that she does not like men who wear, who button up their shirt till the first button, and what she says, she wear banyan inside the shirts. I mean, that is how she judges their character. And that is why when Madhav comes, then her grandmother just whizzes past saying he is wearing a half sleeve shirt with no banyan inside. I think that's just a kind of humorous and kind of indirect way of talking about that he is not such a straight jacketed little mama's boy like the rest of the men who have been coming to meet her. And you are very right in that. Even I agree with you that if there's one place where even I felt like, okay, I wish this is not how what happened in the movie, is one, I found that long explanation at the end by Meenakshi's character, very going against the tone of the entire movie, where she just comes and she's like, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do that, and one wonders why she never spoke like this before. And probably one hint is that now that she knows that Surya has accepted her, or he's by her side, so she finally has the courage to speak up to her parents, which I think is a little problematic. And yes, this thing also, that she feels that there is no way out, like either she gets married to this person or she gets married to that person, but there is really no direction outside of marriage itself, and there is no complexity of the feelings explored between Maina and Surya. So yeah, at the end, Surya suddenly becomes a human character out of Meenakshi's, imaginary world, which I think was probably that unraveling of the conflict could have been dealt with better to suit the tone of the movie more. But I think it kind of fits himself into the frame of being a believable or mildly acceptable story at the end. I feel that is the only way I understand it, because it had to go for release in the big theaters, I guess. That could be a reason. But yeah, even I found that part odd. It doesn't fit with the rest of the movie for me.
Yeah, and just to add to your point, it was like, yeah, sorry, I was thinking, just 1 minute. Yeah, so yeah, the person you desire and the person you marry. So you can actually desire a person who does not fit into the social norms. But when you are marrying the person, then he has to fit into the social norms. So Shirja is made into a respectable, marriageable person. So that is the tone on which the narrative ends. So that was also a bit disappointing yet interesting, because it might be a critique of the social aspects of marriage.
Yes, absolutely. That's why I said just quickly, I'll say that Surya and Meenakshi's story at the end actually kind of tones down and fits into this frame of acceptable respectability, all of that. Whereas in Nana and Maina, you see that, the direction that Meenakshi's story was taking, if it had taken an alternative direction, been completely unrestrained in its exploration of the wacky and the fantastic, then that is what could have happened. Like, that is a possible story. But it remains a subplot which is at the most glossed over in the movie, and it's a very hurried kind of subplot, which as an audience we don't even have time to digest it much. But that, I think that reversal does happen at the end, where suddenly it seems as if both Meenakshi and Surya were toned down so that the audience finds them mildly acceptable.
And Nikhila adds in the chat that he's also made into like a properly upper caste, Brahmin Iyer. So,
Yes, true.
any more comments, questions? Okay, in that case, yes, please go ahead.
There are a lot of issues in the narrative. So in that sense, you can't expect it to be perfect, number one. And number two, it need not always match what we think as politically correct in terms of gender politics. So if you are evaluating the film in terms of the being a perfect plot, or in terms of the perfectly matching with our ideological dispositions, then again, always there will be some gap between the two. You take any film, you can't have a, and of course, there are multiple interpretations of the narrative and the plot structure, character, color, everything is possible. So in that sense, it is not something that the movie is presenting, it is something that we are reading into the movie. That distinction, I think, is important to keep. Apart from that, I just wanted to bring in Kashinath, an actor and a director in Kannada, who shot into frame in the late 80s and 90s. His movies were popular, but they were not super hits, nor they were prized. Precisely because the outsourcing of the transgressive woman was not to other communities, but to a Brahmin woman. So the protagonist or the heroine herself will be a transgressive woman in his movies. So that's why it was looked down upon. Otherwise, the characters of transgressive women is always found in the movies. But who takes on that role? And if at all, if you present it like that, then there will be a kind of backlash, if not from the audience who are watching the movie, but from the critics. And it shows the social background of the critics rather than the audience or about the movie per se. So I think in that sense, some of these movies where the transgressive woman becomes the upper caste woman, and which is also trying to be a mainstream movie, will have this kind of backlash. You can have a re-evaluation at a later stage. That's a different issue. That is an academic moot point. But in the social space, the critic is always not in terms of representing the upper caste woman as transgressive, but on other issues. That's why I was trying to say there is no need to answer those criticisms. We need to see why these criticisms are coming up and what is the social locale from which these criticisms are coming up. That's all. Thank you.
Sure, thank you so much. If you don't mind, could you just repeat the name of the director you mentioned? I would like to look at their work.
Kashinath.
Kashinath.
his movies are always dubbed as a B-grade movie. Of course, this movie has also been dubbed like that. Raunchy scenes and things like that.
Any more comments, questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Bageshree, for this wonderful session. And thank you all for logging in and participating. See you next Saturday and have a nice weekend. Bye. Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you,
Bye.
Bageshree. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you all for joining.